You're listening to the Weekend Sport Podcast with Jason Pine from News Talk ZB.
Let's get you across the Tasman. Adam Peacock, codesports.com.au, our regular Saturday afternoon correspondent from Australia. How you doing, mate?
Good, Piney. Yourself?
I'm doing very well, thanks. Very well. A bit to get through. Australian Formula One Grand Prix on this weekend in Melbourne. How big is this in the Australian sporting landscape, this event?
Yeah, it's large, especially given the modern day way of Formula One that has just got a lot of interest from outside the sport, say, compared to 5 years ago with their Drive to Survive series on Netflix. Impossible to get a ticket across the weekend down there in Melbourne. I think they had something like 120,000 people through the gates yesterday, and it's going to be the same today and the same tomorrow, even though it's typical Melbourne weather. It's far South Island, New Zealand type areas with their precipitation and wind and cold. And not that I can talk, because I'm looking forward to a day at Randwick, or not going to Randwick, but looking forward to seeing what's happening at Randwick with the championships, the horse racing, and it's just turned ugly here as well. But anyway, it's massive down there, and this was 3 years ago when it all turned to you-know-what, with the gates not opening when COVID first hit. But I think now there's that full appreciation of people enjoying themselves, and yeah, it's massive. It's massive in Melbourne, and it's big enough around the rest of the country. We'll tune in.
Good stuff. We'll cover that off the main day of it tomorrow here on the show. Let's go to the NRL. This story, I think it happened during the week, or it's been bubbling away for a while. This is Joseph Suaalii signing a $4.8 million deal to come across to rugby union in the year 2025. So this is a couple of years down the track. But from what I've seen, there's been a bit of a war of words going back and forth between rugby league and rugby on this one.
Yeah, well, not really rugby union. They're just happy that they've got a talented kid like Joseph to come over and play, and he played through like a lot of the talented kids through their teenage years. They actually get poached by rugby union schools or GPS schools over here, like Joey's. You know about that over here, over there, like a big rugby union school. And Joseph played both through school, and a lot of talented kids do. I think it's like 1 in 6 have rugby union on the resume in the NRL. But they poached him, and mate, it just sent a lot of hardened rugby league types cross-eyed. That's the best way I can describe it. It was just weird. I don't know what it's like over there. Like, I don't know how Roger Tuivasa-Sheck's going with his rugby union, but there was a bit of that when he went. It's like, oh, why would he give up rugby league to rugby union? Well, firstly, he wants to travel the world, and secondly, he wants to get paid more. That's pretty simple. And thirdly, he might actually enjoy the sport, and that might be number one on the list. So it's just weird, Piney. I don't get the whole chest-beating competition about rugby league. How dare they leave? I just don't get it, mate.
Yeah, no, I don't get it either. And it happens going both ways as well. I think, if we take it back to the pre-professional days of rugby union, when players left rugby union to go to the NRL, and I think of a couple of high-profile New Zealand players, the likes of John Gallagher and Matthew Ridge. This is the back end of the 80s we're talking here, Adam. And there was all sorts of wailing and gnashing of teeth about somebody wanting to make a living from sport, which they couldn't at that time in rugby union. It's like, surely it's what's best for the player themselves. I mean, Joseph Suaalii is clearly, going to have a look at a deal which is going to pay him $4.8 million over 3 or 4 years if he goes to another code.
I would have thought if your market forces dictate that a player like that can't get what he can get in your own sport, you've got to have a look at your own market forces. Like Nathan Cleary wouldn't even be paid what Joseph's going to be paid in rugby union. Now, whose fault is that? Is that rugby union? No, because they can actually afford, allocate, find a hole. This was always going to happen when Eddie Jones came back. It happened the first time around when Eddie had the team. In 2003, he had Wendell Saylor, Matt Rogers, Lottie Takiri come across. A few others thought about it and didn't go in the end. Andrew Johns famously turned down rugby union, but very, very nearly went. It's going to continue to happen with Eddie back. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a nibble at Cam Murray, who he brought up in an interview with Phil Gould a couple of weeks ago about a player that he really admires in rugby league. He didn't do that just because he felt like saying his name, Eddie. He did that to, put it out there. So, look, rugby league better get used to it. But, I mean, week in, week out, rugby league has the stronger competition compared to Super Rugby. That's a fact of life as well. So it's just for the benefit of the player, the individual, whatever they feel like doing. And Joseph obviously felt like going and playing a bit of rugby union for a whole heap of cash.
Indeed, and good luck to the kid. Good luck to him. Speaking of rugby league, Matty Johns, he's well known obviously in rugby league circles mainly for his media career following his playing days, but a reasonable player as well. He's got a couple of sons, I didn't even realise this, Jack and Cooper, who are going to play one another in the NRL today.
Yeah, so Jack plays up at Newcastle. He was at South. Cooper was at Melbourne. He's come to Manly this year. And he's kind of the backup in the halves for Josh Schuster. Now, there's a famous name across rugby league and rugby union. He is related, Josh, to the famous Schuster family, but he's done his quad, so he's out this week. So Cooper's come back in. He played the first round. But yeah, two brothers up in Mudgee. I've got a whole heap of mates. Actually, here's a funny story, Kindly. I my daughter's dance concert this weekend, so I've kindly, as the father does, supports the brethren. So I'm going to the dance concert, whereas about 8 mates have gone up to Mudgee, about 3 hours west of Sydney, to get on the sauce all weekend and go watch Newcastle Manly this afternoon. So a little bit of envy in that respect about not being there to watch Johns v Johns, but no, it should be a good one. I've got no idea which way Matty goes with who he supports more. He probably just looks at it and hopes that they both don't get hurt and play okay. Yeah,
that's right. And just before you go, I haven't prepped you on this, but I'm pretty sure you have eyes on it. The Socceroos, obviously, off the back of their World Cup exploits in Qatar, had their first couple of games back home against Ecuador in the last week or so. What did you make of the Socceroos, and do you foresee a bright future for this crop of players?
I do, and Graham Arnold hit the nail on the head after the game. He said, like, the only way they're going to improve is they go back to their clubs and keep playing lots of games. So if they go into an environment where they're going to be sitting on the bench for the next 12 months, playing half an hour every 2 weeks, it's probably not going to fly for the national team. It's not going to fly for the individual. So there are very encouraging signs, because now we've got this situation where we've got a core group of players that went to the World Cup, performed really well, and now you've got younger players like Nastri Irankundu, who I'm sure you've seen in your A-League calling. You've got Alex Robinson, who's over at Manchester City, a few others that are coming through. And you've got a lot of dual national availability players as well over in Europe that Arnie's going to go over and try and have a chat to. And I do believe that young Marley Luluai, who captained your under-17s, he can play for the Socceroos as well. So New Zealand football might want to nail him down to his New Zealand heritage before we come in and nick another one. But there's so many of these kids, and Arnie's going to go over and make sure that we've got depth coming through to put pressure on the senior players.
Always enjoy chatting, Adam. Off to the dance concert you go, and we'll chat again next Saturday.
I look forward to it, and I'll be taking my phone to watch the races in the back row. Cheers.
Good on you, mate. Adam Peacock, our regular Saturday afternoon Australian correspondent. Read him at codesports.com.au.
For more from Weekend Sport with Jason Pine, listen live to News Talk ZB weekends from midday, or follow the podcast on iHeartRadio.